Broad strokes are that you need a static image output. So you need to be able
Yeah.
to always display on this screen these same 4 or 8 or however many cameras you want to have on this screen.
Everyone, welcome to another episode of the In the Trenches Roundtable. Really excited for this. We're going to be diving into a product-focused episode. Specifically, we're going to be talking about decoders. Cue up the drum roll, please. Excited to dive into this one. We have our awesome panel of experts with us today.
Hello.
Howdy.
Absolutely. So I want to first start off by covering what sections we'll be working through in this episode. And first, we're going to cover what is a decoder. That way everyone's on the same page. And then we'll move into the options that SCW provides for decoders. And then we'll wrap up and finish with actual implementation and use cases for decoders. So covering like video wall setups and live viewing best practices. Without further ado, let's jump in. What is a decoder?
All right, I think the best way of describing a decoder is if you've ever seen either videos or in a movie potentially of like they're in the security room and they've got all these cameras kind of surrounding on a big wall. They got all these monitors and TVs. That's what a decoder delivers to you. It is a device that grabs camera streams, either from the NVR or the IP camera, and allows you to display them on monitors or TVs. So that's kind of them in a nutshell.
That's fair. So how exactly do these decoders connect to an NVR? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't an NVR also display video?
It does. It does. An NVR is going to have, 1 to 2 HDMI outputs where you can plug in 1 to 2 screens, depending on the model that you're looking at. But what if you need 15 screens? So that's where a decoder comes in.
That's awesome. Thanks. So back to my main question. It was how do the decoders connect to NVRs and IP cameras?
Yeah, so the decoders actually would live on your network along with your NVRs, and they would absolutely use that same network to display to multiple screens. It's actually fairly simple.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, can you guys maybe help me understand and the audience understand where we would use decoders, or where they're most commonly used?
Broad strokes are that you need a static image output. So you need to be able
Yeah.
to always display on this screen these same 4 or 8 or however many cameras you want to have on this screen. And so that might be something like a production facility. You always want to see the product going in, the product mid-manufacture, the product coming out with however many views make sense depending on the level, the number of steps in your production, and to make sure that quality control. You're not going to be switching these videos up and look at a different channel. So a decoder is a really perfect example of this.
I'll throw one out there too. I mean, I think one of the most common places you're going to see a decoder being needed is going to be a guard station. So one of the major things that you want to create when you have a command center, a guard station, or whatever you want to call them, is you want that consistency to know that when you sit at your desk, you know where the cameras are, and you know when you get a radio signal or call or whatever, and you can look up and you can see that, hey, I can see what's going on with this camera because it's always there on that right corner. So that guard doesn't have to pull up any software. He doesn't have to grab a mouse and change views and try to find that camera. And there's just basically less things for them to have to be trained on, to have to understand that could potentially go wrong. If you're using a software-based VMS, then they have to learn that. They potentially could close out. I mean, I've heard tons of stories about people closing them out and all this kind of stuff and having to get somebody involved at 2 a.m. to get the guard back up and running. So, there's lots of things that can go wrong with that. Whereas a decoder is reliable, consistent, live view at all times. And there's nothing you have to do to achieve that once you set it up, obviously. So,
Yep. A hospital or a hotel might be another really good example. So for a hotel, you need to have your security guards that could have full control and probably need a PC that's allowing them to view a singular camera that they're investigating something, but then also the wall behind them might be every single camera.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, your front desk might want to see who's coming into the building or who's in the hallways. Your cook in the restaurant might want to see, the 6 cameras that are watching who's in the restaurant from the customer waiting perspective, from the food production and creation perspective. And your bellhop might want to be able to see, who's waiting for bags in the hallways. And so you can set up all these different views that don't require anybody to have to know or manage the software. So you don't have to train the bellhop how to use ViewStation. They just have an output that's the 5 cameras of things in the hallways.
Couldn't have said it better. I think if we want to put like just a bow on this, it's like anywhere live view is important, and you need it specifically, maybe even distributed live view, where you need multiple people to have access to the system in a way that doesn't have a lot of implementation needs too, like when we talk about the software and stuff like that. And I know we'll compare a little bit more one-to-one, like what that looks like later in the video, but that's kind of the way I would frame these.
That makes sense. So let me get this right. If I, let's say, have 10 locations, can I view all 10 of those locations at my headquarters using a VPN?
Through VPN? Yeah.
Yeah, if you've got a VPN, that's a virtual private network. If you're not familiar with that, it sort of combines multiple locations into one integrated network. And you have the throughput to be able to send the video from location A back to headquarters, and the throughput on the headquarters in order to receive all those videos. Yeah, you're gonna have a great experience with this. You're gonna be able to see each and every location and create custom grids that make sense for each department that needs to be able to view the use cases.
That makes sense. That's awesome. That's great. So transitioning now to talking about the different models that we carry here at SAW. What are our options currently?
We have 2 different models currently, and one of them has 6 HDMI outputs, so that means that you can connect up to 6 displays to it. And the max monitor count, or max display count on that in terms of grid is up to 16 cameras per display. And then we also have a 12 HDMI one, so that gives you 12 outputs now to displays. You're talking very big. But one of the advantages of that one too is it actually allows you to do up to 36 cameras per single grid too. Or, and these are all customizable per output too. Keep that in mind. So, you can choose that 36 on one, and then 1 on another, and then 4 here, however it works for you. We got a pretty good example image here from one of our clients. And you can see what that looks like, and how they've set that up. They're kind of combining all of the tools that they have available with us to get their live view and get the views and the setup that they need. So
Gotcha. Okay, so I understand that the HDMI output, it goes to monitors, right? But why do I notice, looking at some of the specs on our decoders, it says they have HDMI inputs.
Mhm.
Am I reading that wrong, or is that right?
Yeah, that's one of the
you-
coolest features.
Yeah, honestly, it
Such a
is.
cool feature.
So the 6 channel one, or 6 HDMI port one, has 2 inputs, and then the 12 has 4 inputs. So you could input like literally whatever you want to put into that particular port and have it show on your wall, and again configured through ViewStation. I think
there's
James
walls.
has a very, very good example of how that was used.
Yeah, there's lots of different things you can do. You can get very creative with this, but you can imagine, have you ever walked in? I'm sure everyone's walked into a gas station where you see the monitor up there and it's displaying, the camera feed. A lot of times this request comes with like, hey, they want to provide additional information and not just a camera feed to kind of tell them, okay, we're watching you. They want that, and then they want to let them know that Gatorade's 2 for $4 today or something. Whatever deal they're doing or whatever is important to that convenience store, right? So they can put, the cameras up here kind of in a grid, and then as part of one of those grids, they can also plug in their computer that the sign software is on, and flash through that as well, let them know the deals or anything else that's going on with that convenience store. So they're getting dual use out of that, which was once just a security thing. It's now also a marketing asset for them too. There is so many ones, there could be
So if I'm
weather.
understanding you correctly, if
Yes.
this video output that we're watching here on YouTube with the 4 of us in a grid,
Mhm.
suddenly like we decided we didn't want Ben on here and pushed him out and instead put like 10% off bullet cameras this week, we could show that up. And that's sort of what you would see for like a 4-channel grid with one of those things being an output from, let's say, a PowerPoint presentation, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So you
Yeah,
have a
that's a really neat sort of digital signage usage.
Yep. That's one of the first ones that we ran into with questions about that, because that was a really key thing for some convenience stores. Another one I can think of right off the top of my head is production monitoring, which is a lot of where decoders are vital, and you have to have them because you're monitoring a lot of cameras. You need to see a lot of them statically, but you might also need to have some kind of diagnostic or performance info from that's being sent from computer or some kind of other device, and you can plug it into the HDMI and the input on the decoder, and then display it as part of those grids. So you always know that your diagnostic info is here while the cameras are kind of surrounding it, and that way, you're just utilizing the space, because that is a concern with any kind of thing. If physically, one person can only look so far, so if you need to. You could have a dedicated potential display for that diagnostic info, but you need to, you kind of have to have you may want to put it in there because of the space limitations, honestly. So
you may also want to put it through the decoder because multiple parties need to see it. So like, let's take an energy production facility, how hot is it running?
Yeah.
Simple temperature output. And that's not the only thing you would have here, but just dealing with the temperature output, there's probably several different individuals who need to be able to see both cameras. And are the sensors inside the apparatus for the machinery saying it's running correctly? Or on a production facility, are the output matching the expectations in terms of units per second or per minute? So like any sort of those more industrial sensors data that you might have, you could integrate into several different parties who might all need that information, might also need, visual verification of that information.
that's an excellent point, because you can distribute that one output maybe from that machine to, let's say you get the 12 HDMI one, to all 12 of those HDMI outputs if you wanted to. That's like a key point with that one, because I thought, that way you don't have to get into like splitters and all this other kind of AV kind of stuff. So yeah, great point.
That's awesome. So that about wraps up our conversation about decoders, how they fit into the ecosystem of a surveillance system. I want to wrap up though by asking the panel of experts here, are there any other considerations we should have when it comes to decoders?
I think the only thing is this is a fairly complicated product. It's got a lot of options. If you have questions or you think maybe I need this, if you have video, viewing in itself can be a very complicated topic, because there's so many factors with bandwidth, PCs, bottlenecks on certain devices and everything. If you have a lot of viewing requirements, reach out to us. We can definitely push you into the right direction, whether that is a decoder, whether that's utilizing some of the NVRs and or some combination of it all. Let us know, and we can point you in the right direction and tell you how to implement it and everything. That's what I would probably hammer it down.
And it's nice that it's just like a set it and forget it type of thing too. It's just set it up, walk away.
The thing that I would reiterate is you have a panel of experts that can help you with this from our entire sales team and support team that can assist you in setting this sort of thing up. And this is a complicated product that probably does require that. But it is probably one of the most powerful products, especially with being able to stick in that non-surveillance operational or digital signage data into a view. It's so incredibly powerful. It's so neat. It allows you to really make business level changes in terms of achieving business outcomes. And it's such a great product for that, but it is complex. And it's good to have a team to help set it up, help define it, help you discover what would be useful for you, and define how to make it work.
Absolutely. And so that'll do it. Really appreciate all that final insight, team. Really appreciate spending the last 30 minutes or so going through this in depth because it is a complex product. And hopefully, audience, you saw some value in understanding whether or not a decoder could be for you or not. But if you didn't, that's okay. Just have the conversations about viewing and we'll be able to point you in the right direction. We'll drop links to any of the resources that we've hinted at or called out in the description below. Drop in the comments below if there's any sort of topic that you would like to see us cover or a certain product. And without further ado, we'll let you get back to it. So thank you so much for tuning in this week. Bye-bye.
Yeah.